I've decided to share this because I just found out my cousin is getting married soon, and the whole family expects me to attend. They keep telling me to let bygones be bygones after what my aunt did, but I can't. It's been 7 years since I spoke to her, and I don't plan to start now, no matter how much pressure the family puts on me. When I was 16, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. My father had died 3 years earlier in a workplace accident, so it was just me and my younger sister, 14 at the time, living with Mom. My Aunt Susan, Mom's sister, was always close to our family. She lived just a few blocks away, and after Dad died, she became even more involved in our lives. As Mom got sicker, Aunt Susan practically moved into our house. She cooked meals, drove Mom to appointments, and generally kept our household functioning. I was grateful beyond words. My little sister was struggling with Mom's diagnosis, and I was trying to balance school and being there for both of them. Susan seemed like our guardian angel. Mom lasted 8 months, 2 months longer than the doctors predicted. In her final weeks, she was mostly on pain medication that kept her sedated. During one of her rare lucid moments, about 2 weeks before she died, she asked to speak to me alone. She was worried about what would happen to me and my sister after she was gone. She told me not to worry because she had set up a trust for us with the life insurance money from Dad's policy, plus her own policy and their savings. It wasn't a fortune, but it would be enough to see us through college if we were careful. Susan will be your guardian, but the money is in a trust, she explained weakly. You'll get access when you turn 21. Until then, there's a monthly allowance for expenses. The house is part of the trust too. You won't have to move. I nodded and promised her we'd be okay. That was the last real conversation I had with my mother. She slipped away 2 weeks later with Susan, my sister, and me by her bedside. After the funeral, we tried to establish a new normal. Susan officially moved in as our guardian. The first few months were a blur of grief, but slowly we started to function again. I threw myself into school, determined to make Mom proud. My sister seemed to be doing okay too, although she became very attached to Susan. About 6 months after Mom died, I started noticing changes. Susan had redecorated most of the house, getting rid of furniture that had been in our family for years. When I questioned her, she said, "This is my house now too, and I need to make it comfortable." It felt wrong, but I didn't know how to argue with her. Then she started restricting our access to money. The monthly allowance Mom had mentioned became smaller and more controlled. Susan would question every purchase, from school supplies to clothes. When I asked about the trust Mom had mentioned, Susan got defensive. "Your mother left me in charge of everything until you're 21, she said. "I decide what's necessary and what's not. If you don't like it, you can get a job." So I did. At 17, I started working part-time at a local grocery store while maintaining my grades. I figured I could save up some money and have a bit of independence. But every time I saved a few $100s, something would come up where Susan would insist I contribute to the household: new appliances, home repairs, car insurance for the car I rarely got to use. The situation deteriorated over the next year. Susan's boyfriend started spending more and more time at our house. He was in his late 40s, unemployed, and made me uncomfortable with the way he looked at me sometimes. When I complained to Susan, she accused me of being jealous and trying to ruin her chance at happiness. My sister, who had always been closer to Susan than I was, began taking her side in arguments. I felt increasingly isolated in what should have been my own home. The breaking point came 3 days after my 18th birthday. I came home from school to find Susan and her boyfriend loading furniture into a moving truck. "What's going on?" I asked. "We're moving to Arizona," Susan said casually, as if she was telling me we were going out for dinner. Ted got a job offer there. I stood there, stunned. "What about us? What about school?" "You're 18 now, legally an adult," she said. "You can get an apartment or something. Your sister is coming with us. She's excited about the new school." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But what about the trust? The house? Mom wanted us to stay here." Susan's expression changed then, from casual to cold. "There is no trust, not anymore. I had to use that money for living expenses these past 2 years. And the house is being sold. The market's good right now." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That's not possible. That money was for our college. The house was supposed to stay in the trust until I was 21. Susan shrugged. "I was made the executor of your mother's estate and your guardian. Legal decisions were mine to make. Maybe your mother should have chosen someone else if she didn't trust my judgment." I ran inside and found my sister packing her room. "Did you know about this?" I demanded. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. Aunt Susan told me a few weeks ago. I didn't want to upset you. You can't go, I pleaded. This is wrong. She's stealing from us. From Mom. Don't say that. My sister snapped. She's taken care of us when she didn't have to. I want to go with her. Arizona sounds nice. I spent the next several hours in a panic, calling the few adults I trusted, my guidance counselor, my best friend's parents. No one seemed to know what I could do legally, especially with Susan being the executor of Mom's estate. When I confronted Susan again and threatened to call a lawyer, her boyfriend Ted got in my face. Listen, kid. It's done. The house is sold. The money's gone. You want to waste what little you have on lawyers, go ahead. But I promise you won't win. That night, I stayed at my friend's house. The next day, I returned home to find most of my belongings packed in boxes in the garage. The moving truck was gone. So were Susan, Ted, and my sister. They'd left at dawn. On the kitchen counter was an envelope with $2,000 in cash and a note, your share of what's left. Don't contact us. Update, the first year after they left. I was suddenly homeless, with $2,000 to my name and 3 months left of my senior year of high school. My best friend's parents let me stay with them until graduation. I got a full-time job at the grocery store where I'd been working part-time and found a tiny studio apartment I could just barely afford. I tried calling my sister countless times, but she never answered. Eventually, her number was disconnected. I found Susan on Facebook and sent messages about wanting to at least stay in touch with my sister, but she blocked me. After graduation, I went to the local community college part-time while working full-time. It wasn't the future Mom had planned for me, but I was determined to get an education somehow. During this time, I managed to scrape together enough money to consult with a lawyer about what Susan had done. The lawyer confirmed my suspicions. What Susan did was almost certainly illegal. As the trustee of my mother's estate, she had a fiduciary duty to manage the assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries, me and my sister. Selling the house and using the trust money for herself likely constituted breach of fiduciary duty and possibly fraud. However, the lawyer also gave me a harsh reality check. Pursuing legal action would be expensive and time-consuming, with no guarantee of success. Susan had liquidated everything and moved across the country. Even if I won a judgment against her, collecting might be impossible if she had already spent the money. Sometimes the cost of justice is higher than the injustice itself, the lawyer told me sadly. I left his office feeling defeated but somewhat validated. At least I knew I wasn't crazy or ungrateful. What Susan did was wrong, possibly criminal. But I had to focus on surviving and building my own life now. Update, 3 years later. By the time I was 21, I had completed my associate's degree and transferred to a state university with a combination of loans and scholarships. I worked nearly full-time while taking classes, but I was making it work. Then came the call that upended everything again. It was my sister, now 19. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. You were right about her. Over several long conversations, I learned what had happened. After moving to Arizona, Susan and Ted had gotten married. They used the money from our mother's estate to buy a nice house and start a business that failed within a year. As the money dwindled, Susan became increasingly controlling and emotionally abusive toward my sister. She told me you abandoned us, my sister said. That you chose not to come to Arizona because you were selfish and didn't care about family. My sister had believed this for years until she found paperwork in Susan's office related to our mother's estate while looking for her birth certificate. The documents showed the extent of what should have been our inheritance and made it clear that Susan had systematically drained the accounts. When my sister confronted her, Susan flew into a rage, calling her ungrateful and threatening to kick her out. That night, my sister packed a bag and left. She used her savings to buy a bus ticket back to our hometown. I immediately drove to the bus station to pick her up. When I saw her step off the bus, looking so much older than her 19 years, I broke down. We stood in the terminal hugging and crying for what felt like hours. Having my sister back in my life changed everything. She moved into my small apartment, got a job at a local coffee shop, and enrolled in community college classes. We were rebuilding our relationship and starting to heal from the trauma Susan had inflicted on us. My sister wanted to pursue legal action against Susan, but I was hesitant. The lawyer I'd consulted years ago had made it clear how difficult and costly it would be, and now even more time had passed. The trail of money was likely cold. I just want to focus on moving forward, I told her. We have each other now. That's what matters. She reluctantly agreed, and for about a year, We heard nothing from Susan or the rest of the extended family who had largely sided with her after the move to Arizona. Update: 5 years after Susan left. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in accounting. It had taken me longer than the traditional 4 years because of my work schedule, but I'd done it with minimal debt, thanks to scholarships and working through school. My sister was thriving in her nursing program. Then came the first attempt at contact from Susan. She sent a Facebook message from a new account. "I heard you graduated. I always believed in your potential. I'd like to reconnect and explain some things. Family shouldn't stay estranged forever." I showed the message to my sister, who had a visceral reaction. "She's probably broke and wants something from us," she said. I agreed and didn't respond to the message. But it opened the floodgates. Suddenly, extended family members were calling and messaging, saying Susan had changed and regretted how things had ended. They urged us to forgive her, to remember she raised you when she didn't have to. It was infuriating. She hadn't raised us out of the goodness of her heart, she'd been legally obligated as our guardian, and she had been compensated quite well with our inheritance. I blocked several relatives who became too insistent, but the pressure continued. Around the holidays, it intensified. My mother's cousin called to tell me Susan was having health problems and really wanted to reconnect before it might be too late. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a phone call. Susan sounded older, her voice raspy. She talked about how much she missed us, how losing her sister, our mom, had affected her judgment, how Ted had been a negative influence. They were now divorced. "I know I made mistakes," she said. "But I did the best I could at the time. Can't we move forward as a family?" I listened silently, waiting for any acknowledgement of what she'd actually done, stealing our inheritance, abandoning me, lying to my sister. There was none. "Are you still there?" she asked after a long pause. "Yes," I said. "I'm waiting for you to actually apologize for what you did." "I just said I made mistakes," she replied, her voice hardening slightly. "That's not an apology. You stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from 2 teenagers whose mother had just died. Money that was specifically left to provide for our futures." She sighed dramatically. "It's always about the money with you, isn't it? I provided a home, food, emotional support during the hardest time of your lives. That's worth something." "It was your legal obligation as our guardian," I said. "And you were paid very well for it with money that wasn't yours." The conversation deteriorated from there. She started crying, saying I was cruel and unforgiving. I hung up and blocked her number. Update: 6 years after Susan left. My sister and I were both established in our careers. I was working at an accounting firm, and she had completed her nursing degree and was working at the local hospital. We had moved into a better apartment and were saving to buy a house together. Out of nowhere, we received certified letters from a lawyer in Arizona. Susan was suing us for elder care expenses. The claim stated that as her only family, we were legally responsible for her care costs now that she was unable to work due to health issues. I panicked at first, but a quick consultation with a lawyer reassured me. The laws Susan's lawyer was citing didn't apply in our case, especially given the circumstances of our estrangement. It was a frivolous lawsuit, likely a desperate attempt to get money from us. We filed a response through our lawyer, and the case was promptly dismissed. But it was a stark reminder that Susan would never stop trying to use us. Around this time, my sister started therapy to deal with the complex emotions surrounding our family situation. Her therapist suggested I might benefit from therapy too, and she was right. Through counseling, I started to process the anger and betrayal I'd been carrying for years. My therapist helped me see that cutting contact with Susan wasn't just about self-protection, it was a healthy boundary. She also helped me understand that some family members would never see my side because it would require them to confront uncomfortable truths about someone they loved. "You don't need everyone to validate your experience," she told me. "You know what happened. Your sister knows what happened. That's enough." Update: present day, 7 years after Susan left. Which brings me to now. My cousin Jamie, Susan's brother's son, is getting married next month. We've always been close, even through the family drama. He asked me to be a groomsman, and I happily accepted. Then came the bombshell: Susan is not only invited to the wedding, but she's playing a significant role as honorary mother of the groom since Jamie's mom passed away a few years ago. Jamie called to tell me he hopes this won't be a problem. "She's family," he said. "And she's been really good to me and my dad since Mom died. I know things are complicated between you two, but can't you set it aside for one day?" I was speechless. Set aside the theft of our inheritance? The abandonment? The lies? The continued manipulation and lack of remorse? Before I could respond, Jamie added, She's changed, you know. She's not the same person she was back then. I've heard this line so many times from family members, yet she's never once given a genuine apology or made any attempt at restitution. A changed person would try to make amends, not expect the victims of their actions to get over it for the sake of family harmony. I told Jamie I needed to think about it, but the truth is, I've already decided. I won't be attending the wedding if Susan is there. I won't put myself in a position to be pressured into a reconciliation I don't want. I won't pretend everything is fine for the sake of family appearances. My sister feels the same way. She actually laughed when I told her about Jamie's request. The audacity of these people, she said. They want us to play happy family with the woman who stole our future and has never shown an ounce of remorse. Some family members have started calling, trying to convince me to change my mind. She's getting older, they say. Don't you want to make peace before it's too late? The truth is, I made peace long ago. Peace with the fact that the aunt I loved died the day she chose to betray my mother's last wishes and steal from her children. The woman who exists now is a stranger to me, one who happened to play a crucial role in the most painful chapter of my life. I don't wish her harm. I don't even hate her anymore. I just want nothing to do with her. And I don't think that's unreasonable given what she did. My question to those who've read this far, am I wrong for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of this? Am I being petty by not letting bygones be bygones as my family keeps insisting? Final update, the decision and aftermath. After posting this originally, I was overwhelmed by the support I received. So many people validated my feelings and decision not to attend the wedding if Susan would be there. Several commenters suggested an alternative: tell Jamie exactly why I can't attend and offer to celebrate with him separately before or after the wedding. I decided to take this approach. I invited Jamie to dinner and laid everything out for him, the full story of what Susan did, including details I'd never shared with extended family. I showed him the few documents I still had, including the lawyer's assessment of what Susan had done. I explained that this wasn't about being unwilling to forgive, it was about protecting myself from someone who had caused tremendous harm and never shown remorse. Jamie was stunned. I knew there was bad blood, he said, but I never knew the details. Dad always said it was just a misunderstanding about your mom's will. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I told him. It was theft. She stole hundreds of thousands of dollars that was meant to secure our futures after our mother died. To his credit, Jamie really listened. He said he needed time to process everything, which I understood. A week later, he called me back. I talked to my dad, he said. He admitted he's always known more than he let on. Apparently, right after Susan moved to Arizona, she loaned him a significant amount of money to keep his business afloat during the recession. He now realizes that was probably your inheritance money. Jamie was clearly conflicted. He'd been close to Susan his whole life, but now he was seeing her in a different light. I can't uninvite her to the wedding, he said finally. She's been there for me since Mom died, and honestly, it would create a whole new family war. I assured him I understood and didn't expect him to uninvite her. This isn't your battle, I said. I just wanted you to understand why I can't be there. Then Jamie surprised me. What if we make sure you never have to interact with her? Different tables, different parts of the ceremony, I'll run interference all night if I have to. I appreciated the offer but explained that it wasn't just about avoiding an uncomfortable interaction. It was about not wanting to be part of an event that celebrated Susan as some kind of maternal figure when she had betrayed that role so profoundly in my life. We reached a compromise. I would attend the ceremony only, seated far from Susan, and then skip the reception where she would have a more prominent role. Jamie would tell other family members I had an unavoidable work commitment for the reception, to avoid drama. My sister decided not to attend at all but sent a generous gift. I'm not ready to be in the same room as her, she explained. Maybe someday, but not yet. The week before the wedding, my uncle, Jamie's father, called me. Our conversation was awkward at first, but then he said something that caught me off guard. I owe you an apology, he said. After talking with Jamie, I realized I've been complicit in what Susan did to you kids. I accepted money from her that I suspected came from your mother's estate, and then I helped maintain the family narrative that you were being unreasonable and unforgiving. I was wrong. I was speechless. This was the first time any family member had acknowledged the reality of what happened. I can't make it right, he continued. But I want you to know I'm ashamed of my part in it. And I've told Susan she needs to make amends if she ever wants a relationship with you two again. I thanked him for his honesty but made it clear I wasn't holding my breath for Susan to make amends. 7 years had passed without any genuine acknowledgement of what she'd done, despite multiple opportunities. The day of the wedding arrived. I attended the ceremony as planned, sitting in the back with friends of the groom rather than with family. I spotted Susan in the front row, playing her part as the devoted aunt. She saw me too, our eyes met briefly across the church. She looked away first. After the ceremony, I congratulated Jamie and his bride, took some photos as requested, and then made my exit before the reception began. Jamie hugged me tightly before I left. "Thank you for being here," he whispered. "It means everything to me." As I drove away from the venue, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was sadness for what my family had become, relief at having avoided a confrontation, and, surprisingly, a sense of closure. The next day, I received a text from Jamie. "Just wanted you to know that Uncle Mark, his father, told Susan she wasn't welcome to make a speech at the reception after all. He said some things have consequences that don't go away just because time has passed." I think he was speaking for all of us who now know the truth. I smiled reading that. It wasn't justice, the money was still gone, the years of struggle still happened, but it was something. For the first time, someone in the family had stood up and said what Susan did was not okay, and that meant more than I expected it would. 2 weeks after the wedding, an envelope arrived at my apartment. Inside was a check for $25,000 and a handwritten note from my uncle. "This doesn't begin to repay what was taken from you, but it's what I can do now. The money Susan loaned me all those years ago, I should have questioned where it came from. I can't change the past, but I can try to right some small part of this wrong. There will be more when I can manage it. No strings attached." I showed the check and note to my sister, and we both cried. It wasn't about the money, though it would certainly help with our house down payment, it was about the acknowledgement. Someone had finally validated that a real injustice had occurred. As for Susan, I still have no desire to reconnect. Perhaps someday she'll offer a genuine apology and attempt to make restitution, but I'm not counting on it. Some people never change, never take responsibility for their actions. What I've learned through all this is that forgiveness doesn't have to include reconciliation. I've forgiven Susan in the sense that I no longer let anger toward her consume me. But forgiveness doesn't mean welcoming someone back into your life who has shown no remorse and might hurt you again. I've also learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, trust, and love. Sometimes the family we choose, friends, partners, mentors, can be more family than those we're related to. My sister and I have built a good life despite what happened. We're closer than ever, supporting each other through education, careers, relationships, and all of life's challenges. We've created our own little family unit, one built on trust and mutual respect. In the end, what Susan took from us was substantial: our inheritance, our home, years of financial security. But what she couldn't take was our determination, our bond as siblings, or our ability to build a life we're proud of. In that sense, we've already won, regardless of whether justice in the traditional sense ever comes. So no, I don't think I'm wrong for maintaining boundaries with someone who caused so much harm and has shown no remorse. And I'm grateful to those family members who are finally beginning to understand that letting bygones be bygones isn't always the right answer when the bygones include theft, betrayal, and abandonment. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and build something new from the ashes of what was destroyed. That's what my sister and I have done, and despite everything, I'm proud of the life we've created together.